And the hospital concept has done well too, with some hesitations, right?
30,000 strong in the U.S. now.
30,000 hospitalists in the U.S. It's the fastest growing specialty in medicine, and the two of us said it could never happen. Because we were fearful of the break between the doctor-patient relationship. So then Gino and I, that's Gino and I at the Mayo Clinic in consultation with the Mayo brothers. It was a one-sided conversation. So then Gino and I felt that the way to build a master clinician was by running the national course in what we did. And we developed a course on medical care of the surgical patient that Mayo approached us about joining with them, and it's the national course. But the problem is we spend 5 days out of the year with physicians who want to be the master clinician, and the other 360 days they're on their own. They're on their own doing their thing. And the course has done well. That was the brochure. If any of you are going to be in Seattle in October, we're going to be in Seattle for a week. It'll be nice. But we build a community that gets lost after the end of the course. And how do you build the master physician, the master clinician that way? It's really tough. So then Gino and I got on the lecture circuit, but the lecture circuit for the American College of Physicians, the National Organization of Internists. They came to us because we had lectured at their national meeting. They said, guys, we want to give you 1 hour, and you can do whatever you want at the national meeting. We guarantee you 2,000 people in the audience, 2,000 internists who have come to learn. And Gino and I thought, what can we do to involve the group and make an impact where we can bring in the art of medicine, the doctor-patient relationship, and also update the physicians about what's the latest in medicine. And in our profession too, not only do we have to update the physicians, but we have to tell physicians when is it time to forget what they've been doing because it's out of date. And with the little time for physician-to-physician interaction and less time to read journals, it's hard for doctors to know that it's time to do something other than what they've been doing for X number of years. So what we did, we plagiarized from the Nixon-Kennedy debates, and look at the set, look how elaborate the set was on the Nixon-Kennedy debates. You know, right? We played from the Nixon-Kennedy debates and National Public Radio Car Talk, the Tabit Brothers, and we blended it with the feeling of Prairie Home Companion. And doing it all together, we came up with Consult Talk. And it was our way of reaching out to physicians to show them how to enhance the doctor-patient relationship and be the master clinician. And what we would do it live. We'd be in the city where the national meeting would be. In fact, we were in New Orleans 2 weeks ago. And we say we're broadcasting live from Philadelphia. And actually, the first time we did it, we were in San Diego, I think. Someone walked into the auditorium a little bit late, and we said we're broadcasting from Philadelphia. So Philadelphia, I think we're in San Diego. Like she thought we made a blooper, and we weren't really on the air. But it's fake. And we take questions that were sent in and answer them in the spirit of the Car Talk guys. And we start off like that. And then we felt that was good, but that's 1 hour out of the year where we could address that audience. And we wanted to do more to get a worldwide audience. So I want to introduce Dr. Christine Lane. Chris, raise your hand.
Hello.
Christine is the editor-in-chief of the Annals of Internal Medicine, the most prestigious journal worldwide in internal medicine. And it's the journal supported by the American College of Physicians. And we met with Christine, and she had ideas and we had ideas. And her idea was that we make Consult Talk a worldwide experience and offer it online through the Annals of Internal Medicine website. So that's Chris's bio if anyone wants to read it. I think you'd be more happy if they subscribe to the journal. And there's the logo, the Consult Guys. And what we do is, and you can go online and pull up a Consult Guy episode if you're in Saudi Arabia or Tel Aviv or Philadelphia. And every episode links the doctor-patient relationship, the need to spend time with the patient, and some medical information. So, and here are episodes that you can get, and there's always humor in the episodes. And I'll tell you, we received one hate mail in the years, we're going into our 5th season, we received one hate email. I can't tell you who it came from, but the domain in the email was hhs.gov, the Health and Human Services, US government, senior physician, who felt, and I'm paraphrasing this, Christine, so don't worry about it.
And actually the hate mail wasn't to them,
it was to the editor-in-chief. And felt there was no role for humor in medical education, because we always bring humor in on this. And the response was, what are you going to write back to this person? And we said, nothing. We're not responding to that. So there's always humor in this. There's humor in every episode except one, and we'll tell you about the one episode in a few minutes. So we're going to take you through a Consult Guys episode where you're the audience. We always ask for a volunteer to come up to the mic in an auditorium of 2,000 or more, and because we give out a prize, but we have the prize for everyone here, Margaret? They're going to get when they leave. Everyone here is going to get the prize that we gave out in New Orleans 2 weeks ago to the one person who came up. Okay, even if you don't even participate, you get the prize. So we ask for volunteers, and there's always a round of applause. So we're going to get to the case, and Gina will present the case, and this is going to be part of our video production. We videoed it last week. It'll probably play worldwide in about 3 months. So you're seeing it here first. All right, Gene?
Okay, so we have a 25-year-old woman. We are not aware of any medical problems. The history is really deficient. We are not aware of her physical findings except for those which are visible in her picture. So here's the patient in question. So
Okay,
take a look.
So now we're not going to violate any HIPAA rules, patient confidentiality. You know, Lynn Abraham is here making sure everything is done legitimately.
So let's get that picture.
Okay.
So we all see this. Lisa Giardini Giacondo, Da Vinci, 1503, 1506, at age 25.
So
Take a
look
at
at Lisa.
that picture.
Look at
Yeah.
Lisa for a minute or so. Now you've seen this hundreds of times, right? Who here has seen it in person? You can never get this close, right? Impossible. Can't get this close. Just look for a few minutes. Time is up. So the question is, and the question we have for the physicians, and I'll translate this for you. If lab testing was available to you today, what lab abnormality would most likely be compatible with Lisa's appearance? And I'll go through each lab abnormality. A is a sedimentation rate. It's a marker of inflammation, and that's a very abnormal result there. B is a positive skin test for tuberculosis based on her appearance. C is a uric acid that's high, meaning she has gout. D would imply she has low iron levels. And E implies very high cholesterol, so high that she would have an inherited genetic abnormality causing the high cholesterol. So we did it live in New Orleans, and we gave the group time to think about it. And then the physicians did not come up with the right answer just looking at it. So we're going to take you through the way we coach them through the answer.
Howard says maybe they have an answer.
Oh, does anyone want to get, who says A? High inflammation? One.
Oh.
B, tuberculosis test. The reality is back then, probably everyone had a positive. Dr. Kane, pulmonary expert, in Italy, 1500s. I mean,
too happy to have
who thinks she had gout? Low iron due to anemia.
Oh.
How about super high cholesterol? Okay, Attorney Abraham is the one who says super high cholesterol. So here's hint one, and we gave the audience time to look at hint one, and they didn't get it. So we focus in on hint one. See that bump? Now, you've seen this painting hundreds of times. Has anyone noted the bump before? No one. It's there. Because Da Vinci was very accurate in his work, very, very accurate. Now, the bump, we thought they'd focus in on rheumatoid arthritis. Very high sedimentation rate would be present in rheumatoid arthritis. We showed the audience the classic hand sign of rheumatoid arthritis. That's not the bump. Now, in tuberculosis, you can get clubbing. This is called clubbing of the fingernails. And here we use this to remind the doctors to focus in on the patient. Don't look at the electronic medical record. Focus on the patient. And her fingers did not have clubbing. So we said it wasn't a positive PPD. It wasn't about tuberculosis. In gouty arthritis, you can get swelling of this part of the fingers. She does not have swelling. She does not have gout crystals in her hands. When your serum iron is very, very low in chronic anemia, you can get what are called spoon nails. And Mona's nails were not spooned. We think Mona Lisa had familial or inherited hypercholesterolemia. So Lynn Abraham was correct. And we're not going to ask Lynn how she got it, but we're going to point out to you she has this bump there, and see right there? That's called a xanthelasma. Next time you look at the Mona Lisa, she has a xanthelasma. We think Da Vinci depicted someone with familial hypercholesterolemia. And we use this to review with the physician. That's a patient with xanthelasma. Usually they're in the medial aspect of the eye like Mona had. And we go over the physical examination. And also with familial hypercholesterolemia, you can get this circle around your iris. I tried to look at it. I don't see the circle there. I'm not sure Da Vinci would have seen it. And we reviewed with them the current treatment, the treatment today of familial hypercholesterolemia. So all in 7 minutes. Focus on the patient, make the diagnosis, learn a little history, art history, and have the latest update. Now, there's another thought we had about Mona Lisa, about the xanthelasma. And one of the doctors in New Orleans pointed it out. Who wants to comment on her eyebrows? Or a lack of them? Or lack of them. In hypothyroidism, underactive thyroid, you can lose your eyebrows. You can also have very high cholesterol. So the thought was, did Mona Lisa have hypothyroidism? We don't think so, and I'll tell you why. I went through someone who translated Da Vinci's memoirs and the history of the painting. And about 200 years ago, someone restored the painting and rubbed out the eyebrows in the restoration. So that's not how Mona looked. Also, we found that Mona, her neck was not swollen, so probably not a goiter. And the yellow skin really is due to aging of the painting, not Mona. But also, she had 5 children. And it'd be very unusual in the era in which she lived to have 5 children with hypothyroidism and survive. So we think Mona Lisa had familial hypercholesterolemia, of course untreated, and now whenever you look at the painting, you're going to see the xanthoma and the xanthelasma, right?
Well, you guys know how to ruin art.
So, right? So Gene, tell the group the response we got to this in New Orleans.
Oh, people couldn't believe it. They've looked at this picture multiple times, never noticed that at all. I personally myself looked at this picture a number of times, never noticed those things.
So it was our way of reaching 2,000 physicians in the trenches to make them better doctors, with a focus on the need to look at the patient and be with the patient, but also update them because the treatment of familial hypercholesterolemia changed over the past 2 years.
So who's the guy who picked this up from Mona Lisa?
So the initial work on the tendon xanthoma was a pathologist in Italy. We are the ones who ruled out hypothyroidism, because there would be no way she could have had 5 children and be that hypothyroid. So through all this, believe it or not, I told you about the negative fan mail, we get positive fan mail. And I want you to see some of the fan mail we got from the web-based consult guys. And it was addressed to us in care of the American College of Physicians. And I'm going to read it for you because it's a little tough to read. It's on the stationery of Catherine Fast, who's a surgeon in San Francisco. Consult guys, my 4-year-old just came up to me and asked if we could watch a movie on my phone. This seemed odd. I said, what kind of movie? He said, the kind with the 2 guys at a table with drinks. I looked back. He said, they have a mailbag, because we pulled a letter out of the mailbag. I said, the consult guys? He said, yeah, them. I said, we couldn't, but we could send something for the mailbag. You have fans in San Francisco, Dr. Weitz and Dr. Murley, and Pete, we sent Pete a consult guy's shirt. And he's going to be one of the master clinicians of the future. Now I want to show you the trailer to Consult Guys. So how do I, we want to show you the trailer, and then we're going to get in and show you the latest thing we're doing to develop the master clinician. So whenever you look at Consult Guys, no, let it run. So, if we get the slides back on. So that's how each show starts. And it's a lot of fun, but there's a message in what we do. So we want to show you the latest in our reach out to the world. And we've had thousands of views each month on the show. So does anyone here use Twitter? A few. I really didn't. But you know, we want to reach out to the millennial generation. And we want the millennial generation, the generation that we're most worried about, young physicians, who didn't grow up the way we did in terms of the doctor-patient relationship. And we felt a way to do it was to link Consult Guys to the millennials and the group a little bit older who use Twitter and can capture the knowledge on the fly.
I think you need some women in order to really.
So the Consult Guys entered Twitter 70 hours ago. And what we do is, the next season will be available on Twitter. And we've used it to reach out. And the response has been pretty amazing. And I'll give you an example. This was the intro to us being on Twitter. And an interest that Gino and I have taken up has been the physician's role in decreasing the injury and death from firearms. We're not taking on the Second Amendment. We're taking on how to lower the risk to patients and their families who have a gun in the home. Because through work that we have become aware of, you can target the person who's at risk. And this year, there will be 36,000 people who die due to firearms in the United States. 22,000 will die due to suicide. And suicide is often preventable. So our first show of the next season is going to be the physician's role during that 20-minute examination on how to screen for firearms risk. It's the first consult guise that we've done where there's intentionally no humor because there is no way to bring humor into it. During the 7 minutes of the show, one person died due to firearms in the United States. And we go through the hotspot, and I'll tell you the target is the male, the white male, age 60 or older, who had recent financial loss, is at the highest risk of suicide due to firearms. And the day after we did this live in New Orleans, I came back and I saw a patient, and he told me that his company was going bankrupt. And I said, let me ask you, do you have a gun at home? He said, I do, and I thought of using it. I never, ever would have brought that question up before, ever. So Gino and I are committed to getting this out there. And what we did, this is the Twitter feed from the other day. And does anyone read Danielle Ofri? She's a columnist in the New York Times. She's a physician also at Bellevue. Dr. Ofri wrote yesterday, when Ebola rears its head, we spring into action. We should be doing the same thing with gun violence. She did not know that the way Gino and I got around this was we do the show showing the statistics on gun violence and compared to epidemics, because you may not know the Centers for Disease Control is forbidden from funding research on gun violence because of the NRA. And we did not want to take on the NRA, but we wanted to show that it's an epidemic. So the intro to the show, we have gun violence, mortality 36,000, Ebola at its peak, 5,300. And we have 3 other epidemics, and we say, yes, it is an epidemic. So Dr. Ofri had this on her feed, and then we added on to it. And we said, in our episode airing June 19th, the consult guys discuss how during a 20 patient visit you can help reduce firearm-related injury. So then we had US firearm mortality 36,000, Ebola 5651. And Dr. Ofri responded back, and all of her followers from the New York Times saw this yesterday. Very eye-opening to put this in perspective. So this is the way Gino and I are getting the message out there. And I'm not a social media person. Karen Glantz here will admit I don't know how to use Facebook. I follow my kids on Facebook, right? And I follow Karen's triathlon episodes on Facebook. But for me, we realized the learner is different than when Gino and I were learners. And to keep physicians updated and be the master physician is really tough. So we're using social media and other venues to get out there. And this is only a piece. We feel that there must be research done to look at how do you make physicians the master physician? How do you get physicians to help them forget what should be forgotten and learn new things? And how to help them remember in this era when we're so overloaded by technology, which is great in patient care, but can also be bad in being a barrier between you and the patient and a physician from his colleagues. We're trying to do research and help physicians to become the master physician. Also, those of you that follow professional sports, you know that every star athlete has a coach. And the better they are, the better their coach is. We feel that physicians need coaching when they're out there because once they finish their residency, they're on their own. And we look at setting up the Center for the Master Clinician to research and look at a variety of modalities to create the master physicians out there. This came on our Twitter feed a couple hours ago. A physician asking advice on his patient who was in the cath lab, who had a pacemaker and was about to have their aortic valve opened up with a TAVR, the catheter-based aortic valve opening. This came through on Twitter at part of our feed for advice on what to do. This shows how targeted social media is so involved in patient care, and we want to be the ones doing the research and getting the word out there on making physicians better. So here are the things we've done, everything from the book. I show this. I was visiting a professor in Mexico, and someone took my slides and translated my talk into Spanish. I found this on the internet. Yeah, this is the translation, and the rest of the slides were in Spanish. I never authorized it. So it's one of the bad things about the internet. And I know I have at least one copyright lawyer here. So this is what we're doing. I'd asked, Dr. Daniels, who is one of our mentors. Roger, any thoughts you have? Before we're going to open up the discussion. We want to hear your feedback about it. Does this sound like something we should be doing, or is it too out of the box, or it's going to fail? Roger?
Well, I think both of you are to be really congratulated for the efforts you've made to bring out the concept that we need to reconsider and to learn. And yet it's not a new idea, because when we went through training, we always were taught, learn from the patient. The difficulty now is partly that we're so pressured by time, by the circumstances of our involvement with patients and computers, that even very involved doctors and patients haven't enough time to know and understand how to care for many of their patients. So this really gets down to the issue of medical education, partly. Because when I was educated, before anybody was born in this room practically, it was a matter of learning the anatomy of the body, which I wondered from the beginning how I would use that knowledge when I grew up, to courses in biochemistry and so many other experiences that have no relevance now. So what that means is that in the course of educating the physician years ago, a different emphasis upon education was present than now. And so when I attended even the lectures of great physicians in Boston, physicians that you were privileged to listen to, that really is not enough. It's a matter of learning again how to grow as a physician that these two men have taken on as a task, which is an extremely important one. As was stated, it's essential that we continue to grow and to learn. So we try. The patient. The difficulty, as I said, is having time, but it's also being willing to spend extra time, maybe to help that patient get a visit with a physician. Or maybe it's taking the time not expected of a problem that requires that extra effort and time. These men do that, we try to do that. The education is something that shouldn't end when we finish our training. And too often we're suddenly in the position of having to start work, and medical magazines, various even annals go unread by most of us as we try desperately to stay up with what has become, obviously, in all areas of American life, greatly beyond the expectation of the education that we had once, or the knowledge that we can possibly grow to learn in our own lives. So was brought out by Howard how to get young people, people who are going to be the physicians in the future, to understand the need to grow and the need to change, and the need to recognize that you should never stop growing if you're involved in any area or pursuit, whether it be medicine, law, business, whatever it might be. So the effort here, I think, is to understand how we can help doctors who, when they are finished with their training, think they've stopped their learning, though they say they will go to lectures, so they will attend various courses they need for their continued involvement in caring for patients, to understand new ways of learning are there. The computer has made that possible. And having read an article isn't enough. I did read an article that I have to, or tried to at least, from the New York Times that I'm sure one or more of you have familiarity with, and it had to do with proving that there is in fact merit, more than that, benefit, financially in fact, in the doctor-patient relationship. I don't know if any of you have read the article, but it's quite complicated, I think, and gets down to the financial benefit that may be achieved, but begins with an understanding of the old involvement of doctors with patients and the current ones, which really are not very satisfactory, and we hope can grow and grow into more meaningful ones than we have now. But the article attempted to deal with, scientifically, the benefits financially and certainly emotionally that grow out of the involvement that doctors can have with patients when they're really involved, as they have been and still can be. So I would merely say that I'm in strong support of the effort to try to understand the best way that we as physicians can continue to grow. I certainly don't consider myself as a dramatic example of the excellent physician, only somebody who tries to do the best he can in helping people. But that attitude frequently has been reduced by the pressures of time and the pressures, I'm afraid, of business. So those are some of my thoughts, none of which is very creative and none of which is very unusual, and I think is known really in some degree to all of you.
Gene, your comments?
How do I match that, Roger? Well, I look at it from a standpoint of what's changed in the environment of the people who deliver health care. So just go back quickly to nurses. Nurses used to work 3 8-hour shifts. They were there 5 days a week usually. We've moved to 4 10-hour shifts or 3 12-hour shifts. So they're there longer but less time with the patients. And then we added the hospitalist, who work 7-day shifts and then 7 days off. So suddenly we had doctors who didn't know you, taking care of you for 7 days and then handing off to the next doctor who came in. We thought this would be the new model of care, but it created shift workers as physicians. So Roger and I don't go to the hospital anymore to see you in the hospital, we just visit you, but we don't take care of you anymore. And then finally we have the house staff, the residents, medical students, all the regulatory processes around their learning process. Hours worked, education that's mandatory for them. Dr. Kane has worked through this timelessly to create the model for them to get experience in care, yet meet all the demands of the regulatory bodies. So these are all around the patient. Remember, we created all this around the patient. So we'd like to bring the focus back on the patient through a better way of doing this by creating the young physicians who once again accept ownership and responsibility for the care of patients in the hospital. So we don't lose that focus and create the teamwork. And this is where our idea of coaching and the master clinician come in. So coaches to help physicians focus better on the care of patients as a team. So that's my perspective, looking at how we've changed the healthcare model.
So I want to open up for group discussion, but before, are the bloopers on there? Yeah. Before we open up, our production crew did a video of the bloopers during production. This is totally unauthorized. We found it on a YouTube, and I think it'd be important to see this before we
Break.
outtakes. Okay.
Rolling and going. Hey, we're the console guys. Back for another season. You know, I go watch us. I Gino, will you wait? Just wait. I'll pinch you when it's time. So, what did you, Gino, I said, I said, hi, we're the council guys. Back on the season, giving you advice, you can put into practice. You can put into practice. You can put into practice. Where's the cue card? Okay, look at me. I'm ready. Talk. I'm ready. Okay. Hey, we're the console guys. Back for another season. Giving you advice you can put into practice. Let's do it again. Hey, we're the console guys. Back for another season. Giving you advice you can put into practice.
Okay.
So Ben, that was a tough one, wasn't it?
We want feedback from this group. I mean, this is a very loyal, committed group. General?
Here's my thought. Is there not required mandatory continuing medical education by the regulatory authorities in the Commonwealth and every state, similar to what lawyers have to go through? And if there is, then it would seem to me doctors would be choosing you two as an easier or more effective way of maintaining their skills, or others even more accomplished, if there are any, in imparting this kind of education. Let the doctors, mandate the doctors have continuing medical education, but let them choose how they're going to get it.
Christine, do you want to comment?
Yeah.
So our executive producer and sponsor will comment.
One of the things that the journal does is provide continuing medical education and maintenance of certification activities that physicians can use. They're linked to almost every article that we publish. They're also linked to these videos, to podcasts and things that we do. The most popular mechanism over the years that Howard and Gino have been doing this is watching the video and taking a couple of questions, answering a couple of questions. So thousands of our readers are actually getting their continuing medical education through this vehicle, which proves to me that we have to be more creative. If anybody has trouble sleeping, get a copy of Annals of Internal Medicine, let me know, I'll give you a paper copy, and try reading the original research articles. You will instantly go to sleep. So I think we have to, the challenge is to keep people engaged, is to find ways to accurately communicate that information. The article is important, it is the science, and it's there to be archived, but ways to disseminate the information in there in much more creative, efficient ways that engage physicians, particularly young physicians who have limited attention spans. Like, I'm a general internist here at Jefferson. I precept in the residence clinic, and the mailboxes used to be in the clinic. Annals is a very characteristic green, and it would break my heart because all of their annals would be stacking up in their mailboxes. So I know young physicians are not reading journals. So I think, your point is very good. We not only have to provide we have to provide engaging and really effective ways to educate, to continue education.
And by physicians aren't required, but they can pick and choose. And there's not much continuing education credit for the doctor-patient relationship. So we believe that a lot of the art and medicine has to come out in this too. We also want to build the community of the master clinician, because as in the world there's more and more isolation, we feel that physicians are becoming isolated from each other as well, because you can be linked together electronically, which is often not the best way to do it, and we're looking at creative ways to do that. Bob?
How do you go about picking topics, and how do you go about selecting the insights, ideas, and experience of the Ginos and Howards of the rest of the country and the rest of the world, some of whom must have pretty good insights and knowledge to share as well?
Yeah, and that's a great question. So what we do is, we bring up a lot of topics that we're faced with as in the trenches physicians. We do a lot of work with patients who need surgery and have heart disease. So we read on a regular basis the internal medicine literature, the surgery literature, and the anesthesia literature. And we look for repeated patterns. So I'll tell you our most popular show. Our most popular show was taped to be the St. Patrick's Day show of the first season, and it was so good it had to run earlier than St. Patrick's Day. The show was a case of a patient who came in for surgery and their urine turned Kelly green during surgery. Kelly green. And the question was, what do you do as the surgeon? Do you stop the surgery? Do you get a medical consultation? Do you call anesthesia? Do you call the police? I mean, we had all the choices. The Kelly green urine is a very rare metabolic abnormality when you get propofol anesthesia. Some people metabolize propofol to this Kelly green metabolite that goes out the urine. The answer is you do nothing. You keep on operating. At Cleveland Clinic, when I was here last week, I gave medical grand rounds. They wanted me to meet with the residents. I met with the residents, and I presented the case of the green urine, knowing they'd get it wrong. There were 50 residents, they all got it right. The American Board of Internal Medicine took the question, they put it into the board exam, and the residents are studying for their boards. It was one of the examples to learn for the board exam. So here, a bizarre case that I picked up by reading the anesthesia journals, I thought it would be really cool, and actually, the consult guys show, we talked about the color of urine in diagnosis of disease. And the Kelly green thing was just sort of a nice little tidbit. But that got picked up into a curriculum for residents. So we base what we talk about on our experience, on what's appeared in the journal. So under Christine's leadership, the Annals of Internal Medicine is usually the dissemination point of national and international guidelines. We're worried that it takes too long for guidelines to turn into practice. So when a guideline comes out, we look at it as suitable material for a show to help get the guideline out there sooner. Also, we feel committed to look at social issues with a medical impact, like firearms. That's where it comes from.
Actually, I'm a little disappointed because I thought that what you were going to be doing was creating a vehicle for figuring out why Roger is such an outstandingly brilliant diagnostician that physicians throughout the city refer to when they're stymied, and how to communicate that to the rest of the medical community. So when are you going to do that?
So here's the story. So I'm going to break all confidentiality.
Oh, no.
We had a meeting, what was the meeting yesterday, Margaret? Tuesday, to go over the general game plan for this presentation. I did not show the group the slides. I told them, the group, I wanted to say that we wanted to recreate the Roger Daniels of the future, the master clinician. Roger said, I forbid you from saying that. So that's why.
So what are you doing?
Because Bob Ramson said it.
And he just gave consent.
He just gave consent. Yeah, that's what it is. Lynn?
I have a suggestion, just a thought. As long as you're doing firearm investigations, something I've done for 50 years, so I have some experience in it. There are two other great physicians in Philadelphia, one who may be retired, that's Bill Schwab at Penn, who has told me that he has brought physicians to Philadelphia from foreign countries to do trauma surgery on gunshot victims here so they can go back and fix the war wounded
Yeah.
in their own countries or on the battlefield. The other is Amy Goldberg at Temple, who's also a trauma surgeon. She has a program called Cradle to Grave. She takes kids from the neighborhood, the kids who are the most likely to kill or be killed. And she shows them what happens when somebody is brought into the ER. It's a very effective program. And as long as you're studying this to think of what's a good model, Bill may be retired or semi-retired, but they're both around and they have written extensively on this topic. And you'd be interested in going to talk to Amy Goldberg. She's a terrific doctor.
That's great. Let me tell you what we did on the show. On the show, when we want to bring an expert in, we identify the expert and we call them during the show. Now the show's taped, so there can be foul-ups and we keep doing it until we get it right. Believe it or not, the incoming chairman of the Board of Governors of the American College of Physicians is an avid gun owner. And he is the chief of general medicine at the Mary Imaging Bassett Hospital in Cooperstown. And he had Gino and I there to lecture in Cooperstown. We have a call out to him because he's the one who devised how to screen the patient in 30 seconds during a 20-minute visit. I think having some visuals as we go on for another show is a great idea.
I have also a sort of a question. The other one, first was an observation. Second is a question. Or maybe second is an observation. I'm one of Roger's patients, so I reveal that. I don't really care. One of the reasons he's such a good clinician is that he really does take the time, and he studies all about yourself and your history of your family. It used to be that a physician took care of your great-grandmother, your grandmother, your mother, your father, you, and your children. So the whole generational picture of who you were when you walked in there was almost known, and the service was paid for on the way out the door. Maybe it was a chicken, maybe it was a pie, but it was fee for service. So the only way you can be the master clinician is if you pay very, very close attention to the patient and really get up close and personal, ask a lot of questions. Roger's inexhaustible with his questions. That's not the model today, and that's one of the issues that Roger himself brought up. So my third and most important is the question: how do you integrate the effect of robotics, mechanics, all the AI things that are going on, that hospital, I'll use this word advisedly because I'm not a doctor, hospital politics, and taking care of your patients when you're in a hospital bed and a robot comes up into your door and your face is on there and you say, "How you doing, Lynn, today? Are you feeling okay? Fine, I'll order some meds," and you have a robot dispense the meds without even a pharmacologist or a pharmacist doling out the pills and making sure you got it right. So this is the interface of law, medicine, and economies of hospital care now, which is, as you know,
It's
changing dramatically.
changing. And when I was lecturing at Cleveland Clinic last week, they have the robots and tracks on the floor, and the robots replace the nurses in dropping things off at the rooms, et cetera, and you have to get out of the way. So the issue is, I feel we can't turn back the clock, but we have to maintain the relationship and the responsibility. And in fact, Karen Glanz is here, and she wrote an op-ed that was in the Inquirer about, in her dad's care, a wrong diagnosis was kept in the electronic medical record and kept being repeated. And she wrote it in the Inquirer, published it because it's a public health problem. It's a public health problem. So for us, we first thought, how do we bring back the old days? We can't. So the Center for the Master Clinician will have certain missions. The doctor-patient relationship in the era of technology. What works best? We don't, just because we think things work doesn't mean they do. We need research to see what works best. And the physician who's been out there, what do we do for he or she to help them become the best they can in an era when paper medical journals are losing their utility and other ways are required, on point, on the spot, as needed medical education. Some places are researching this. We're not aware of any place that's committed to the development of the master clinician.
Can I ask one last question?
Sure.
How these outpatient surgery centers you see all over the place, come to us between the hours of 8 and 10 o'clock at night, we'll fix your broken finger, you walk in, you zoom in, they give you a pill or they stitch up something, and that's your doctor visit. Interesting.
So let me tell you.
Master
okay, so
clinician.
what we're
Yes.
doing. So this is not part of this, but Gino and I, for a few years, have been working on a project with a component of artificial intelligence to recreate what we do in medical consultation. We've traveled the country and the world, and we see that a lot of incorrect things are being done for preoperative evaluation, excessive testing, or maybe not the right tests. So we put together a software package that someone at a lower level of skill than a consult guy can assess someone's record prior to surgery and guide the surgical team on what are the risks, what should be reversed, is it a go or no go, and you'd be interested, a personalized consent form based on your individual risks that you bring to the operation. That's one of our side projects. We do that nights and weekends. We do this stuff on Sundays.
How are you teaching students today to get back to what the soul of medicine is? Because you talked about having heroes as physicians, and I think in this environment, in an institution such as Jefferson, it probably is very easy to have many, many heroes. But then you go out on the streets and you're exposed to a much lesser level of doctor to emulate. And what they're being taught after the 4 or 8 years or whatever they spend in this environment, they're then not being taught the same thing. They're being taught to figure out how to work the finances, how to make it work, how to make a practice work. And all of that has become so complicated that they don't want to be in the business of medicine anymore. They want to just do what they have to do to make a living. And it creates a very difficult problem. I think this is a time for a very, very important time, because now technology has overwhelmed the soul of medicine. I grew up when it was important to have people really appreciate who I was or what medicine I was delivering. But you don't see that today. I am exposed to many, many physicians, and you're just not seeing that today. They're not driven by that. So I think it's an important part that we get back to the education, back to this period of time when they're exposed to heroes. And we have to be careful how much we're weighting the technology and the scientific development of the non-relation of medicine, and how little we're spending on what medicine really is in a relationship.
You are so right on. So the one thing we think we have to do, and again, this has to be studied and researched, with Christine Lane's help, we said, Christine, we want to use the American College of Physicians and the Annals of Internal Medicine as the vehicle to build the community of master clinicians. Because I thought for the past couple of years, the residents we turn out, because the residents are the advanced learners, they are never going to be as good as they are the day they finish their residency. And to me, that became scary.
It is.
Really scary, because, when I trained, if you came in for a cardiac catheterization, you were admitted 2 days in advance, had the cath, and you stayed for 2 days. Like, why? I don't know what we did during that time, but it was a 5-day admission. Now it's like 6 hours, right? How do you learn how to adopt and adapt to that, right? So we feel if we can use social media and other things to link everyone in, they can be in communication virtually with their heroes, with the people that train them, and they can become leaders in this themselves. My cardiac cath team has gotten involved with this, and my people get requests to review cases, cardiac cath cases, from labs all over the world in real time. Now it's hard to do it. So should I tell you our infrastructure?
How do you staff it?
So here's how the consult guys staff it. Hannah White's 25 years old, Chicago, Illinois is my daughter, is our infrastructure. Gino and I have a conference with Hannah a couple times a week.
Sunday or Monday.
We say, Hannah, put together a tweet that's going to focus on firearm violence. Or the tweet that Hannah sent out 2 o'clock today. Ready for this one? It says, this holiday weekend, 42 million Americans will be traveling. A lot of sedentary activity. On Tuesday, back in the office, be alert for signs of deep vein thrombosis. And we did a show on this 2 years ago that showed one of the classic signs of clot in the leg was bogus. We have a link to the sign. The tweet alarms have been going off the wall since that went out at 2 o'clock. Our infrastructure, my daughter in Chicago. So the point is, we need a center to make this really work. And find ways to do this so it's not an all-consuming obsession. But you point out great challenges. Bruce?
You need to narrow rather than broaden your focus. Find a way to choose a percentage of the people coming out of school and the physicians in practice and try to address this to them so you can create a community that the rest of the medical community can see and rely on?
So, great question. Do we focus it? So my interest is on the physician 10 years post-training. Evidence has shown that you really start becoming out of date by 10 years. That's why traditionally the board recertification exam is 10 years after you're out. My concern is if we don't grab the learner earlier, we'll lose that later community. So I want to focus the master clinician on the person finishing residency and then to the next 10 years out. That's where the focus should be. But it's a wide variety of learners.
I wonder whether there's not a way to identify a group of, whoever your target group is, a group of them who are more likely to be receptive to what you're preaching. And it's a smaller group, let them get it, and maybe that spreads it into the community better.
But that is getting more and more difficult because what you're facing now is that over half the physicians are not their own bosses anymore. They're working differently. They're exposed to multitude of changes like you talked about, the 7-hour shift, 7-day shifts, and they're not invested in the patient.
Ownership,
And
ownership
I
of the
don't mean
patient.
scientifically.
Right.
Scientifically, they might be invested in the patient, but they're not invested in saying what you were exposed to in your life, a family that looked to you for more than guidance of the next pill they're taking.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think I should preface this by saying I'm a psychiatrist, so you can take this in context.
I'm happy you're here. Let us know if we're on the right track or not.
Well, I think that you should emphasize the self-interest in being able to teach physicians to pay attention to patients and have a relationship with them. Because without that, that's the real satisfaction in being a physician, having a relationship with your patients. And if you don't have that, if you don't pay attention to that, if you don't give that a priority, you're going to have physicians who are very unhappy and burn out.
There you go. Bob?
Apropos of that and some of the other comments, Roger may remember 35 or 40 years ago, Ruth was a model patient for the American College residency exams in which the resident physicians who wanted to get board certified would have to deal with the model patient. And she would talk to me from time to time about some of her patient experiences from the patient standpoint as to how these residents would interact with the patient. And I wonder, her experiences a long time ago, whether that is a relevant kind of experience to use in one or more of your programs.
Well, I mean, the simulated patient is a mainstay of medical education and testing and assessment. And we talked about having a simulated patient on the show. And it's a great suggestion. Christine's team has timed how long physicians will watch the show. So the duration of the show goes from like 8 minutes to one, I think it was 16 or 22.
Yeah.
The longest show was length of stay after a heart attack. And we presented a patient, and the patient was, an unknown. It was Dwight Eisenhower. And in that era, when Eisenhower had his heart attack, the standard was hospitalization for 8 weeks. 8 weeks. So the country was without a president for more than 8 weeks, and Nixon didn't step in. The country did okay. It did okay. So we present as an unknown, and then we got photos from Eisenhower in his room in the hospital at Fitzsimmons Medical Center in Colorado, and it was really great. The interest dies out. It was like at minute 10, Chris, something like that.
I mean, actually, one of the interesting things is of all the videos that the ACP sends out, people's attention span is longest with the consult guys. So the other videos that the American College of Physicians is sort of, you know, a physician at the podium and he or she is giving a lecture and showing slides. Those people will watch for like 2 minutes and then stop. The consult guides, a much larger percent of them will continue on, but the magic mark is like at 7 minutes you can tell that people are dropping off. So we try to keep them shorter, but you guys have a much higher retention rate than anything else that ACP.
Record that.
It's all due to the humor that's part of the process.
I think it's because it's fun, and I also think that it's much more memorable. So I think, give the residents an article about familial hypercholesterolemia, and they would read it and they would retain it for a little while, and then they would forget that you get, what the physical signs are. If they watch the Mona Lisa episode, I bet we're all going to remember that, whether we're physicians or not.
Yeah.
So I think it's sort of the creativity is what keeps people's attention.
And I'll tell you one other thing, we bust myths on the show. So I'm not going to ask, but are you taking fish oil or not? Don't raise your hand. We've been interested in fish oil. We have a show coming out on the mythology of fish oil. And we found the source article that set up the $3 billion a year fish oil business. It was based on research published in The Lancet in 1977 on 23, and they said Eskimos, but when we filmed it, to be appropriate, I had to say Inuit indigenous population. And the way it plays is, none of them died due to heart disease. The correlation was diet high in fish oil, no death due to cardiac disease, fish oil's the link. So then we went and we said, well, how did they didn't die from cardiac disease? So if you were an Inuit, or previously called Eskimo, in Greenland, because it was based on Greenland Inuit, and you died, who do you think filled out the death certificate? By the time the word got to the public health officials weeks later, they would ask the family, what did they die from? What Inuit family's going to say? They died due to advanced coronary artery disease. No one. So it was an error of filling out the death certificate that these researchers used to say there was no coronary disease. If you look at the Inuit in Canada, where there is a much more exhaustive filling out death certificate, they have the same incidence of coronary disease as you and I have. So we busted that myth, and we felt that there was one last benefit of fish oil. It was for people with dry eyes. Ophthalmologists often prescribe fish oil. We waited to tape the show because the National Institute of Health was funding a study on fish oil for dry eyes. It's called the DREAM study. I contacted the author. I said, we're filming this show. Can you give me the advance word? She wouldn't. So the word broke 2 weeks ago. We filmed the day after. There's no benefit with fish oil in the treatment of dry eyes. So I'll tell you, if you have very high triglycerides, more than 400, fish oil will drop the triglycerides. That's the only benefit. So with humor and archaeological digging, we busted a myth, so we used that one to show physicians to forget something they've been doing. We brought the humor in, and the message in that show was, I think, 9 minutes.
Now, Howard, we have to make sure that Lynn Abraham is with us so that when we're sued by the fish oil companies
Lynn,
for
$3 billion
debunking,
a year.
So
Lynn.
medical device and pharmacological lawsuits are legion. I mean, look at Johnson & Johnson. Everybody says it has asbestos, and Johnson & Johnson says there's no asbestos in talc. That doesn't mean anything to juries because they're finding that there's asbestos in talc, even though expert witnesses say otherwise. So there are good medical legal issues. And by the way, your electronic records are great for lawyers. They love subpoenaing all those electronic records that you despise because they're great for discovery. But look, when you're doing such extraordinary stuff, robotic surgery, Da Vinci stuff, cardiac cath in and out. You know, it's like it's like Lucille Ball on the chocolate line. And by the way, that might be something you might want to think about. Asking your patients, what do they want in a good physician? Because going to a doctor today, I don't go to many, Roger, he's my guru of everything. You know, it's like, it's an unpleasant experience. You feel like you're in some goddamn factory, you're standing out there waiting. You know, you sit there for hours, your doctor may give you 10 minutes, then they have to fight with the insurance company. You got 15 women trying to fight with the insurance company over the right number.
Yeah.
Then you get it's really, you know, it really is an ordeal. So, you know, the master clinician is running up against the people's impatience with what medicine has become. And I don't for a minute say go back to the way we were, because it's impossible, it'll never happen. As a matter of fact, when my late husband told his grandson, don't go to medical school, because you're a widget. He went to medical school, he's a great gastroenterologist at Duke, he loves it. But that's because he knows today. You have the benefit of knowing what was and what is, so you have a bigger view of things, a broader view. But that's really one of the things that I think patients don't like. There isn't any relationship with their doctor, and you know, you're there for 5 minutes and you're talking to somebody you don't even know.
Howard?
I think that a great deal of the problem is the education of the medical student today. Jefferson is trying to become far more aware of what the needs of the community are, and not what the atlas says about X, Y, or Z. And it's very apparent that the curriculum reflects that. So it is that the attitude of caring about the person and recognizing the importance of that relationship comes from our teachers also. So that the education of the young doctor, the doctor who isn't a doctor yet, is more important in certain respects than the one 10 years out from the period of completion of his residency or before that. So I think that many of us do what we feel we respect. Many doctors don't seem to have the understanding or the feeling anymore of the pride, of the feeling of fortune to be able to care for people. It's such a privilege. But that attitude is not endued in doctors anymore. And it is almost as if you feel as if you're in a different kind of world. So I think the teachers are responsible for not at least emphasizing the special quality that involves because of its personal nature and intimacy. And secondly, there's a problem of communication. For example, I talked with Howard about this in regard to the hospitalist aspect. I don't resent hospitalists, just that they don't communicate so that the patient who relies on me or you for understanding what should be done. I get calls often about doctors and should I do what he said, should I not do what he said? But it's partly trust and it's partly reason, it's both. If the doctor doesn't know and is honest, that's so important. But what I feel is that the profession isn't bringing up young doctors to understand the special quality of being a doctor. I know that sounds old and past, but it's still exactly the way it is still. As was brought out, the ability to understand and be felt by the patient as someone who really is involved, not just somebody who knows what to do, but who cares what he's doing. That's pretty hard to teach. I agree, though, with the notion that a larger group of people, and you think, are interested really not only in learning, but in teaching what you guys do, could make a big difference. So I agree with the point made. Two people can't have that. You can't be everywhere with everyone. But a larger group, I'd love to be part of that, because doctors need to hear that. They need to feel the commitment that they used to make and don't seem to understand and have anymore. So those are some of my feelings. I think, for example, it comes out now when I agreed with reluctance to have the patients go to hospitalists who would be involved. I didn't have a question at all about their ability. I had a question about their understanding that we knew who they were and they didn't, and it was important not for them to spend a day calling constantly, but call have questions answered, know something about the person and how he feels about what he's going through. But they don't do it. I put people on the one service I felt was most likely to do it, but they don't call me anymore. So I go by and there's a feeling of separation, and it only encourages, again, patients are feeling more and more isolated from doctors and isolated from their own physician. It's a very hard time. You can't do it alone. And even when you have these special sessions, which are fun and exciting and we learn, they're not sufficient. There should be more of people who care enough to be committed to what medicine is. It's a remarkable thing. It doesn't take more than just a little bit of reading of the past and how Osler felt about what we were doing and how special it was. Where is that attitude now? Doctors don't even know who he is who are growing up and coming into medicine. It's very disturbing to me that something I have always felt was as uniquely privileged, that's what I felt, uniquely privileged, isn't felt anymore. So I can only say that's got to somehow be injected into the program of learning. Where is that teaching? That's
So
what
are
I
you
feel.
beginning to see any competition?
I'm sorry.
Because with this idea, which is a very good idea, are you beginning to see any competition? Because this could become every Lojo hospital in the United States looking to make a name and having the doctor who they're advertising in their community that are the gurus of the world. How do you protect this idea in the correct way?
Yeah, so it's a great question. You know, I'm sure there'll be others out there. We've not seen them yet. I think
if you get popular enough, you'll start with the big boys first.
You know, our credibility is that we are the council guys for the Annals of Internal Medicine, the American College of Physicians. I mean, we're the national organization. So as long as Christine Lane keeps us on board, we'll have that credibility, as long as we keep doing super high quality work for
And I
us.
wonder
But other
if
hospitals
this is
don't
the
care about
case,
that.
you know,
Chris?
I wonder if it's a case where if Gino and Howard and Roger do it really well, and it's a model that other places take up and also do it well, that's probably good for public health, because although we would like everybody who lives in the US to come to Jefferson for their care, we probably can't accommodate everyone. So I think, you know, to sort of be the model that other people follow, I think that would be you know, maybe even better than being the only place
Well,
that does it.
when you get as old as I am, you know, as you've seen things develop in medicine, maybe outstanding institutions are at the forefront, but before you know it, you're having pretty dramatic surgery that's done once a year in some community hospital.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you have
has to be done.
to watch
Yeah.
for it.
Good point. Sure.
I'm wondering if you might not go way back in the whole education and think about who your applicants for medical school are and what is it that you're looking for? What makes the mark for this person? Does that whole compassion and passion ever enter into the application process? It would be very difficult and it would be very time consuming. But it seems to me that that's a major factor in who ends up graduating from medical school.
I think you're right, and for me, I also worry about the student who was so compassionate, who I see 5 years later, and the compassion is not there anymore.
Exactly.
So I think your point, so the issue is compassion. Where's the compassion, and how do you keep it going? Because once they lose it, it's gone, I think.
Your ideals at age 25 are very different than 40 when you've been exposed to God knows what.
Any final comments? So I thank you all for coming. You know, this is something we're launching. You're our friends and part of the family, and we wanted you to hear it from us first.
Can you trademark your name?
Consult guys is copyrighted.
There'll be a registered trademark also.
But we,
Initially,
initially it was gonna be consult talk, but we worried about being sued by NPR.
Yeah, because we were going to call it Consult Talk, but NPR had Car Talk. So I will say that we do have a line of sportswear. And you are all going to get part of our line of sportswear. That's the prize for coming here, right? Courtesy of the American College of Physicians and Annals of Internal Medicine.
Lynn should get two, because she got that question.
We don't have
Yeah, Lynn, you got
That's
the
right,
question.
Lynn.
So I really thank you all for being here.
Thanks.
And we'll be around here, and I appreciate your advice to us. Thanks a lot.